The day after the inauguration of President Donald Trump, an estimated 3.5 million people in cities around the country and the world took part in the Women's March, protesting the Trump agenda in what may have been the largest collective protest in American history. The march started with a single Facebook post and grew from there. In Raleigh, North Carolina, Professor Zeynep Tufekci was one of those faces in the crowd.
Marches are great, they're empowering to people, but the magic isn't really in the streets by itself or any online action. It's when you look at the protest and you're, say, a legislator, right? You're thinking, if they can march with 1 million people, what else can they do?
Tufekci teaches in the School of Information at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and is the author of the new book, Twitter and Tear Gas, The Power and Fragility of Networked Protest.
The twist in the 21st century seems to be, since we can do things much easier with digital technology, they don't necessarily have the same level of teeth a similar action, say a March on Washington might have 30, 40, 50 years ago, because that was the result of a long process of organizing.
The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963 took 6 months to organize, arranging buses, bagged lunches, singers, and speakers for 250,000 who attended. Tufekci says the march was a show of strength for the civil rights movement built over the previous 10 years.
It pushed the people in power to take the threat pretty seriously.
1 year later, Congress passed and President Lyndon Johnson signed the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. More recently, Tufekci cites the success of the conservative Tea Party movement. It began in the spring of 2009 with a viral video.
This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage?
Followed by tax day protests around the country. By the November 2010 midterm elections, the movement had a measurable impact.
They got 50-plus Congress people. They essentially blocked President Obama's second-term agenda, and arguably they elected a president that they liked. So it just shows what the protest leads to depends on what happens next.
In 2011, on the other side of the political spectrum, one email inspired by the Arab Spring protests started Occupy Wall Street. Within weeks, it was a movement with encampments all over the country. But when the camps came down, Occupy had little to show for its agenda.
On the one hand, it was really powerful in bringing to people's attention something that was important, inequality. But if you look at the electoral results, or if you look at sort of the policy, it wasn't taken as a threat. And the people in power just didn't really change their way. Inequality hasn't gone down. We don't have new legislation that opposes or tries to dampen inequality. So you can sort of see that the digital technology empowered both of them, but they start taking different turns right after, with really different consequences.
The ease of organizing and mobilizing online has led to a common critique.
For a while, it was just considered slacktivism. Oh, so what? They pressed a button. Is it too easy just to click a link and signal that I like this and I don't like this? I mean, how does it translate into action?
I think it's a great first step. So that's why I don't like the term slacktivism. I don't think it's slacking in anything to click. It could be a very powerful first step. Even if it stops there, it's got power. The question is, how do you take that very widespread but relatively shallow level of engagement and give people who are clearly wanting to do something else, right? How do you organize it so more people can step and say, here are things you could do collectively, and by doing it collectively along the way, you also build those important skills of decision making together and hanging together.
While activists adopted digital technology tools, governments tried and failed to disrupt them. For instance, Tufekci points to the 2011 protests in Cairo's Tahrir Square.
The government just didn't know what to do, so they just shut off the internet, which completely backfired. It was the absolute wrong thing to do if you were a government, because it just brings attention. And a lot of parents who were getting news from their kids in Tahrir Square, the cell phones were also cut.
But governments have also learned how to use digital technology. 5 years later, during an attempted coup in Turkey, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan relied on digital technology, his iPhone FaceTime app, to rally supporters against rebellious soldiers.
It was really sort of amazing to watch this. They're just this little screen, but it confirmed to the country that he was alive. They realized very quickly that the internet and the digital technology would be on their side to counter this coup.
You point out how crucial Twitter and Facebook were in getting people to come out to the street. But you also point out that there's a tremendous amount of power on these platforms now, and that the way that the algorithms are designed could actually determine the success or failure of a movement.
Absolutely. For example, Facebook uses an algorithm, a computer program, to choose how to rank what it shows you. So if you don't see something from someone, maybe Facebook's not showing it to you. For a social movement, that's incredibly consequential.
It was consequential in the summer of 2014 as protests erupted on the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, following the fatal shooting of an unarmed black teenager, Michael Brown, by a white police officer. Early on, Tufekci says, the protests got a lot of attention on Twitter, but less so on Facebook because of another viral sensation, the Ice Bucket Challenge.
And I accept the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge for Big Brother.
Facebook kept showing me the Ice Bucket Challenge, even if it was from weeks ago, it just kept showing the same thing. And you know how you go on and there's baby picture, it just shows you things that are cute and cuddly and that get the likes, because that's how it operates. For a social movement, trying to break into the public sphere, that could mean a form of algorithmic censorship, because the algorithm likes certain things and doesn't like certain things.
Tufekci says the motivations of social media companies and social movements are not necessarily aligned.
In the end, it's a platform that is based on delivering you ads, and they want to sort of keep you on there with things that will keep you on there. And all of their business models aren't necessarily in the interests of what the movements are trying to do long term.
How does the Women's March or Black Lives Matter, how do they sustain themselves and turn themselves into powerful actors that can be a threat to whomever it is that they want to force change through?
Right. The lesson I take from all my research into this isn't stop using digital technologies. It's recognize what they're good for and use them fully for what they're good for, but really recognize what they're not good for. You know, you could use a hashtag to get millions of people to the street, but you can't use a hashtag to figure out how does a group of 100 people in one zip code figure out who's going to run for the school board and who's going to run for Congress and how are we going to organize this. So it's going to come to a hybrid model where we use tech for what it's good for, but not be blinded by the power it gives us in some areas and ignore that it's actually weakening us in other areas by helping us scale up almost too fast. You know, you're going from 0 to 100 miles in just a month or two. You need a better steering wheel than a Facebook group.